Hello, welcome to this video on game theory. In this video we're going to look at the concept of game theory, be aware of how game theory can give us the potential for different outcomes for firms operating in oligopoly, and then briefly at the end of this video we're going to evaluate this theory. So game theory was formalized, it did previously exist, but it was really turned into science by the mathematician and economist John Nash. There he is in the bottom right. He was also famously played by Russell Crowe in the film The Beautiful Mind, and there's a good scene in that involves game theory. So what is game theory all about? Well, in our context, it's really about looking at two businesses and how their decisions and their actions are interrelated. It can also be used in terms of games, actual games like poker or chess, and looking at what does it take to win versus your opponent. There are lots of other applications as well: penalty shootouts, serve and receive in tennis, individual plays in a game of American football. So game theory here in this context can be used by economists to predict how firms will react in a number of given scenarios. So we mainly use it when we're dealing with firms in oligopoly to explain why some firms may collude, but then to go furthermore and say why often actually they decide to abandon that agreement to collude. A good way to illustrate game theory is to consider two prisoners. And we often call this the prisoner's dilemma. You've been arrested, and so has your friend. And you have a decision now to make. Should you just remain silent, or should you confess and blame your friend and say they did it? Well, we can develop a bit of a matrix here that looks at the potential options. Let's say that you are prisoner 1 and your friend is prisoner 2. Now, as prisoner 1, you have two options. You can either rat out your friend, basically say it wasn't me, it was person 2, my friend, or you can just stay silent. Now, let's see what happens here. Let's imagine that you stay silent and your friend stays silent. Well, they have trouble proving it was both you, there's some doubt, and so you both go to prison, but you both get 6 months, only 6 months. Let's say a different option. You actually rat out your friend. You say it was person 2, wasn't me, governor. Now, if person 2 just says they're going to remain silent, you've agreed maybe to remain silent, but you say it was them. Now you are going to go free because you said it was them and they've said nothing. And they're going to get all the blame and they're going to go to prison for 5 years. Let's look at the final option here. You rat out your friend. You say it was your friend, but they also say it was you. Well, you both look guilty now, and so you're both going to go to prison for 1 year. This one down here is if they blame you and you stay silent. Now, in this model, we've assumed it's a zero-sum game. There will be a winner and there will be a loser. These are the only outcomes that we're looking at. We also assume here the prisoners have been kept separate. You don't know what your friend is going to say. They don't know what you're going to say. You can't talk to each other, but they do know the outcome of your action. So what should you do in this situation? What should you do? Well, you might consider confessing, and you might consider, yep, number 2, my friend, they did it. Now, if you do that, if you're person 1 and you confess and you blame your friend, then you could end up going free. But if you can't trust the other person and they rat you out as well, then you could both end up getting 1 year in prison. What else could you do? Well, you could not confess. You could just remain silent. And if you felt you could both trust each other to remain silent, this might be the best option. If you both remain silent, then you're both just going to get 6 months. So that's worth considering. Let's now look a little bit more sophisticated at this. What would be the best strategy? So maximizing the benefit for the individual. Let's look at it from perhaps your friend's perspective, from person 2. How do I maximize the benefit to myself? Well, the best result I can get if I'm person 2 is that I go free. That'll be the maximum benefit for me and the maximum result. So from that perspective, the maximum benefit for me and the maximum result would be to rat on person 1. Say it was person 1 who committed the crime. If they then remain silent, I'm going to get what I would call the max scenario. I'm maximizing my individual benefit, and I get the maximum best result for myself. However, if I can't trust person 1 and they rat me out as well, I'm going to end up getting 1 year in prison. So again, what might be the situation? If I rat out my friend, I try and maximize my benefit. I try to go for the maximum benefit for me and the maximum reward, but I might end up trying to go for the maximum benefit for me, but getting the minimum reward. And that would be 1 year in prison. And we would call that a maxi-min scenario. So let's summarize the different strategies that we've got here. One strategy would be to collude, to try and work with my partner. I know we've said we can't speak here, but maybe beforehand we agree if we get caught, we're both going to remain silent. If we both remain silent and we collude, then we're both going to get 6 months. However, there's a slightly different strategy I might adopt here. If I'm person 2, if I want to maximize the benefit, the very best situation I could get is that I go free. And so to maximize the benefit for me, I'm going to rat on person 1, and I'm going to blame the other person in the hope that person 1 remains silent, and I'm going to go free. This strategy would involve me getting the maximum benefit and the maximum result. A third approach would be that I'm going to go for the maximum benefit, that I go free, but actually get the minimum return, which is here that I get a year in prison. And we would call this a maxi-min strategy. I maximize the benefit for the individual, but getting the minimum return. So i.e. here, blaming the other, knowing they will blame you. So broadly speaking, we have 3 different strategies. We could both remain silent based on trust and collude. I could blame you, hoping you remain silent, or I could blame you, but knowing that you're going to blame me. A collusion, a maxi-max, or a maxi-min approach. Now, John Nash looked at this and he said there will always be an equilibrium. There will always be a kind of a final position that makes sense. And he described the situation as the result of a game where all the participants are pursuing their best possible strategy given the strategies of all the other participants. So in a Nash equilibrium position, the outcome of the game occurs when player A takes the best possible action given the action of player B, and player B takes the best possible action given the action of player A. So let's move this on now and look from a business's perspective. So we're going to assume here that we've got a bit of a game going on between 2 businesses. And in this game, they have to decide whether to set a high price or a low price. And we're going to show a table here that shows the potential profits, the payoff that the businesses could get from each of those decisions. So here is our grid. On the left hand side we have firm A, and their 2 choices, have a high price or a low price. Here we have firm B, and we have their 2 choices, a high price or a low price. And then for each of the different scenarios, the 4 different scenarios, we have the potential outcome. On the left hand side, this is the payoff to firm A. On the right hand side, the payoff to firm B. So if they both set high prices, they're both going to make profits of 3 billion. If firm B sets a high price, but firm A sets a low price, well, firm A is going to do very well, 5 billion profit, and B is not going to get any. If firm B sets the low price and gains all the customers, and firm A sets a high price, firm A is not going to do very well, firm B is going to generate lots of extra money. If they both go for low prices, they do the same. The payoff is 1 billion each. So to understand here, to develop the Nash equilibrium, we need to look at the game from one person's perspective. And we're going to look at it from firm B's potential, and we're going to assume here that they're a profit maximizer. So what would you do if you're firm B? Well, let's have a look at the 2 options here for firm B. if I set a high price, I could get 3 billion or 0.5 billion. So what is the expected value of that? Well, I could get 3 or 0 depending on the actions of firm A. So on average, my payoff here would be 1.5. If I set a low price, here are my two alternatives, 5 or 1. So my payoff here is going to be on average 3. So if I'm looking at this from a rational perspective, what is my best strategy? My best strategy would be to set a low price. So in this game, regardless of what the other firm decides to do, the best response to the other firm is to charge a low price. But if I'm firm B and I'm doing that, firm A is going to have the same approach. So we're both going to end up charging low prices, and we're both going to end up generating 1 billion worth of profits. This would be a Nash equilibrium outcome. We could also describe it as a max-min outcome. I'm trying to maximize my own individual benefit, but ultimately I'm getting the minimum reward. If these firms got together and decided that actually they could trust each other and they could collude and both set a higher price, both of them could earn higher total profits. But this is not the rational approach for B to take unless they can be absolutely certain that they can trust firm A and they can both guarantee that they're going to charge high prices so that they could generate the best possible outcome across both firms, the highest level of profits. This can also be the case when we look at non-price competition as well. If we're talking about spending on advertising, here we have an option for firm B, advertise or don't advertise. For firm A, the same choice, advertise or don't advertise. We have potential outcomes. If we look from firm B's perspective on the right hand side, if I advertise and firm A doesn't advertise, I'm going to make a lot of money. If we both advertise, we're going to make this amount of money. If I don't advertise and firm A does, I'm going to lose a lot of money. If we both don't advertise, we're both not really going to gain very much. So if I look at it from firm B's perspective with the two strategies, which one is the better option? Well, here the average expected return is 7 and here the average expected return is 4. So if I'm going to look at a maxi strategy, I maximize the benefit to myself, I'm going to advertise. If firm A looks at it from the same perspective, what are they going to do? They are also going to advertise. So we're going to end up probably with this situation here. Another example, again the same idea. We have a pricing decision. Firm X can charge £2 or £1.80, and so can firm Y. If they both charge the high price, they each get 10 million. If they both charge the low price, they each get 8 million. If I look from firm X's perspective, which is the maximum benefit strategy, well, here I can get 12 or 8. Over here I can get 10 or 5. So the maximum strategy for firm X is to charge a price of £1.80. This would be the maxi-max outcome and this would be the maxi-min outcome. If I look at it from firm Y's perspective, well, again, they would be, the maximum benefit would come from them charging a low price. They can either get 12 or 8 versus 10 or 5. The maxi-max outcome for them would be this 12 million here. The maxi-min would be the 8 million. So again, what are they both going to do? They're both going to charge the low price. So here, the maxi-max strategy of charging £1.80 for firm X and the maxi-max strategy for firm Y of charging £1.80 is the same as the maxi-min outcome for Nash equilibrium. So effectively, 3 of these outcomes, B, C, and D, involve the same pricing strategy. So we would say there's one dominant strategy here. It's the same policy, setting the low price, suggested by the maxi-min approach and the maxi-max approach. So both strategies imply a cut in price, and so we would say this is the most likely outcome only if the firms could trust each other and collude would we expect to see them go for A. So some thoughts on game theory. In a one-off game, there may be more of a temptation to not collude, if it's a one-off game, I might as well maximize my own benefit. It is worth considering that actually here, in terms of a pricing strategy, these games are played time and time again. If I go for the low price and I know you go for the low price, I'll see that the outcome is suboptimal. If we keep playing this game, there might be the scope in the future, possibly, for collusion. But beyond that, if I know the game's going to be played again and we're colluding, then I can reduce my price to gain that maxi-max strategy. So we have to think about iterations, playing this game time and time again, and how that might affect the behavior of firms. So firms that may ultimately decide to collude always face the incentive of that maxi-max strategy, taking the maximum individual benefit and getting the maximum possible result. Eventually, if they opt for this in a multi-period game, we keep revisiting prices, the maxi-min outcome will normally result. So we assume that we often reach a Nash equilibrium, as we assume businesses often look to maximize their own self-interest. Being the first mover in any of these sorts of games will normally give you an advantage, because it means the competition have to respond to your initiative. A key evaluation point for the exams, though, is that game theory can really oversimplify complex decisions. And when there are more than two rival firms in a market, the degree of complexity grows exponentially. So in this video, we looked at the concept of game theory. We looked at different types of strategy and outcomes. For example, collusion, maxi-max, maxi-min, dominant strategies, Nash equilibriums. And we've briefly touched on some ways in which we might evaluate this model. That's it. Thanks very much for listening.